and order the Baron to go first. He would have liked to be the first to escape himself, but it wasn't too hard to imagine getting a bad reputation as the coward who was the first to flee before the goblins or the like. He would have the Baron take that inglorious role. Understood. The moment after the knight relayed the orders to his waiting subordinate, "U1T, get away." A familiar voice sounded right next to Barbaro. He felt, for the first time, that his life was in danger. As his escorts drew their swords and scanned the area, figures dressed all in black slipped out of the shadows. Their faces were masked, but their sharp eyes glittered. "We are the Goblin Assassin Squad under General Henry. This will surely be the last time we who lurk in shadows come into the light." And there was one more. He appeared, as if he couldn't help himself, in a red hat, iron shoes, and a scythe, like a god of death. "I am one of the Goblin Guards, the 13 Redcaps, serving under General Henry." "Well, I guess there's not really a reason for me to be here. Guard His Highness. Sound the gong for withdrawal." "Not so fast." A shadow moved. At least that was all Barbaro could make out. One of the knights vanished from the neck up. His blood spurted out like a fountain. When his brain comprehended what he was looking at, Barbaro spurred his horse into a gallop. He was no longer at leisure to fret about who would flee first. He was standing on the razor's edge between life and death. The drums of the Goblin military band under General Henry pounded obnoxiously behind him. "Is it okay that we let them get away?" That was the strategist's orders. "If we took the prince's head, there would be no hope of finding a middle ground with the kingdom." That's true. If General Henry was killed, I wouldn't stop until every last enemy was dead either. The strategist is brilliant. He has his eye on the future. Is that the same reason we didn't wipe out the soldiers? Indeed it is. We need them to escort the prince back to the city. I found it offensive as well. I would have liked to get revenge on them for attacking General Henry's village. All right, Redcaps, let us take care of the corpses. Yes, we need to recover the bodies of the brave heroes who fought with the leader of the earlier group. The meadow was bathed in moonlight. In the middle of it was a camp. Though with no tents, wooden fences, or anything else, could it really be called a camp? Perhaps the most accurate thing to say was that there was an army in the middle of the meadow. Most of them were lying on the ground, utterly exhausted. The reason they could sleep with no bedding during a winter so cold their breath came out white must have been because they were dead tired. One man walked among the soldiers lying like discarded rag dolls. It was the general of the defeated army, Barbaro. Should he have felt lucky that he survived, or unlucky that they encountered such a formidable enemy? The great goblin army that suddenly appeared in Khan was a powerful adversary, no, overpowering. As a result of their clash, Barbaro's forces had been broken in an instant. They had no choice but to flee. He had been losing soldiers so fast it was like his forces were melting away. Where did those goblins come from? He wanted to know. One possibility was that a large goblin army was building a huge kingdom in the Tove woodlands. A group like that coming south was the most convincing explanation. Nobles who had fled with him appeared to have arrived at the same conclusion and consoled him as they fled. They got unlucky. Those goblins were the most elite. Just bringing home word of those goblins was a fine deed. So stupid Barbaro clenched his fists. Defeat was defeat. Certainly, the goblins had been tough. Anyone who had fought them would know that there wasn't anything Barbaro could have done. But to someone who wasn't in the know, Barbaro was the prince who had been defeated by goblins. He would surely be ridiculed. Shit, 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 bile rose in his throat. This was why, although he was as exhausted as his soldiers, Barbaro alone couldn't sleep. When he closed his eyes, he heard the taunts and jeers that would surely await him in the palace when he returned. Barbaro's fight was over. His army was in no shape to travel to the Katsi Plain and join the battle against the Empire. At that very moment, he sensed a presence. It wasn't from his men on the ground, but from the direction they had run from. Was it a straggler returning, or a unit of goblins coming to attack? With his heart pounding, Barbaro shifted his gaze. In the next moment, he screwed up his face in confusion. She must have realized he noticed her, because she raised a hand and casually greeted him. Hiya, where had she come from in the middle of this meadow? There, a mere 20 yards away, stood a peerless beauty with a smile that seemed best described as innocent. If he had been in a city, she would have turned his head, but this was the middle of a meadow. There wasn't even a village nearby. The strangest thing of all was the clothes she wore, something like a maid uniform. If the woman had been armed, he could have guessed she was an adventurer, but that was impossible. Was she a monster? The thought popped into his head. Some monsters had exceedingly beautiful appearances, sprites, for a major example, but he couldn't grasp why she had a maid uniform. "Hey there, I came over to play, you have a minute?" Clearly she was making fun of him. "Who are you?" he challenged her, putting a hand on the sword at his hip. It was an awfully lame question, but he really had no idea who she was. Her existence was so unfathomable, he didn't know where to begin. "I am Lupus Regina, one of Lord Aintz's maids." She stuck a hand up again and waved. "What a strange woman." Then the meaning of the words she said sank into his brain. What? Barbaro was so surprised he forgot about waking up the nearby soldiers. "Well, setting that aside, what a tough time you guys had, But that was pretty low, wasn't it? Having to face that great goblin army was no fair. Seriously, though, I was standing behind that human watching, and I screeched because I was so surprised. Who knew that many goblins would come out? Ha 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 ha." Lupus Regina's laugh was artificial. It was an obvious provocation, but Barbaro couldn't bear it in his current state. "What have you come for then?" There was some movement behind him in response to his shout. If she came intending to attack, she's acting quite strange. There's no point in revealing herself to us. Or is this all a plot to draw our attention? Maybe after gathering our eyes and ears on her, someone else will sneak attack from behind. "No, I am the eldest prince. I am quite valuable. If I am lucky, there will be a negotiation. If I am not, I'll be made a hostage." Well, maybe negotiation would be a little too convenient. Surely, I'll be taken prisoner. Barbaro felt the throne recede again. That said, the high-ranking royal aides who sent him out there without any intelligence on the massive number of goblins in that village could be put first in line for the blame. If I am captured, I should get the chance to meet Aints Ulgaun. Maybe it's not a bad idea to give him a quarter of the kingdom, then have him cooperate to make me king. Perhaps there's a blessing to be found in this curse. That was the sort of thing on Barbaro's mind. "Oh, there's only one reason I am here." She paused for a breath and then declared, "I came to kill you all." Barbaro blinked several times and then screamed. "Huh, what are you talking about? Do you know who I am?" "I am the eldest prince of the Rey Esti's kingdom," Barbaro and yelled Ryle Vaself. Lupus Regina sighed. "But you Rey just a human, yeah? Am I wrong? To us that makes you worthless." "Oh, but I do know you Rey a prince." "Then oh, I see. You mean you'll kill everyone besides me? I can really say that's a good idea, though. Even if you take me hostage, you'll have to let someone go to tell my father, the king, and it'll just make your negotiations harder." Lupus Regina cocked her head, looking puzzled. No, what are you going on about? I'll say it again. I am gonna kill you all. I am gonna kill you all means I am gonna kill all of you. Guess you don't have much brainpower, huh? Oh, in that sense you might be kinda rare, but I am not interested. What are you going on about? Do you still not understand what I am worth? I am the eldest prince, for crying out loud. Where are you getting the idea to kill me? Most people would take me prisoner and demand a huge ransom. Or land or something. It's much more beneficial to use me as a tool for negotiation than to kill me. Who boy, you just don't get it. Lupus Regina put on a creepy grin. Then she continued in a gentle voice, one she might use to explain something to a child. "The ever-lofty Lord Aints Ulgaun simply doesn't need you for his plan. So I am killing you. Got it?" Barbaro couldn't find any words, because it was clear that Lupus Regina wasn't joking around or threatening him to manipulate him. He gulped in spite of himself. "Are you serious? Are you really going to kill me? Ooh, nice. Love that face you're making. You just went up quite a few notches on my list of favorites." Then Barbaro tried to smile with his twitching face, but Lupus Regina replied with no expression. "Lord Aints ordered me to kill all of you. That's why I am not letting any of you leave this place alive." Then she suddenly made a goofy face. "I put a lot of thought into what sort of guys you would have fun with. I came up with an opponent who's perfect for you guys. You had such a rough time with those goblins." She spread her arms with a tada. Behind her multiple figures appeared, almost as if they had seeped out of thin air. "I asked for these to be summoned redcaps. There were 30 in all. They bore a close resemblance to the ones from before, appearing to be ugly, twisted goblins. They all wore bright red pointed hats and iron shoes. They were armed with adzes. In the moonlight they seemed to glow blue. Attack! What do you think you're doing? Wake up, hurry, get your weapons, the enemy is attacking." Barbaro's screams roused the soldiers completely. They jumped up promptly. In the bright moonlight they squinted at the enemy. They Ray level 43. "Honestly, it's totally overkill, but we didn't have any goblins weaker than this in the library," someone screamed. The soldiers who had just come from a hellish battle with goblins couldn't find the spirit to face more goblins. Without even taking up their swords, they fled in confusion. Don T, run, fight, fight, fight. Aaron T, you going to protect me? Not a single soldier followed Barbro's instructions. The nobles ran for their horses. Ah ha ha ha, fantastic. You think you can get away in the middle of this open field? Ah, this is so fun, just the best. I love this. Lupus Regina's taunt was exactly what was on Barbro's mind. The only way out of this was to defeat the enemies. Looks like some of these guys are thinking, if I can just make it to my horse, I'll escape. Can you go cut those dummies' legs off for me? Emitting a shrill cheer for the slaughter, the redcaps began to move. They were like wild animals. They ran, weaving their way through the crowd of men trying to escape. Then there was a shriek. It was one of the nobles who had tried to get away on his horse. A few more screams followed. Now that there were less of them, the fun time wouldn't last as long, but oh well. That just means we'll need to have as much fun as we can. I don't have abilities like Sol does, but I'll show you what I've got. Lupus Regina walked toward Barbro, who had drawn his sword. Her gait was so leisurely, it was like she was taking a stroll through the meadow. The smile running across her beautiful face made his blood run cold. It was 30 minutes later that Barbro was finally allowed to die. Chapter 4, Massacre. Making use of the gently rolling hills of red earth, the two armies took up their positions and scowled at each other. The Kingdom's army, surprisingly large with 245 men, had a right wing of 70, a left wing of 70, and 105 in the center. These were spread resourcefully in camps across 3 hills. The camps were made not with fences, but with the sheer violence of numbers. The first 5 rows of soldiers held spears nearly 20 feet long. These spears required 2 hands to wield. The positions were constructed using thickets of pikes. This was a measure against the main attacking force of the Empire, the heavy cavalry. It also acted in place of chevauches de frise. They didn't have chevauches de frise simply because it would have taken a ridiculous amount of wood to protect such a huge army. Putting their men to work with the spears was more efficient. That said, though this formidable formation was strong, it still had many weak points. The men were crowded together. Due to the heavy weapons, they had their hands full preventing their opponent's charge. For that reason, they lacked the ability to cope with any quick actions. If the Empire launched arrows or spells, they would suffer serious casualties. But these peasant soldiers weren't being asked to do any more than that. Their only task was to stop their enemy's first attack. Meanwhile, the Empire's army had 60,000 men. Compared to the Kingdom's forces, they were overwhelmingly few. But the Imperial Knights didn't look like they expected defeat. Their faces were calmly superior. They didn't think they would lose. They were confident because they knew how much stronger they were individually. Still, the gap in numbers should have been a major concern. If they could fight perpetually without getting tired, maybe not. But that was impossible for humans. If they got worn out, their opponents would eventually catch up, despite the gap in their abilities. The kingdom had one other big advantage: the gap in the worth of the people. Most of the soldiers making up the Kingdom's army were farmers. In contrast, the Empire's knights were professional warriors. If a farmer who was handed a weapon and a knight who required time and effort to train were both killed, the Empire's loss was greater. For that reason, the Empire wouldn't undertake unreasonable operations or the sort that were likely to get knights killed. This flat battlefield, then, where all they could do was clash head-on, would work in the Kingdom's favor. That was why previous wars between the Kingdom and the Empire had always ended as minor scuffles. The Empire normally achieved its goal just by having the Kingdom drag its farmers out onto the battlefield. They weren't about to do anything that would deplete their precious human assets, which the Kingdom understood quite well. This sort of essentially rigged fight was what the wars between the Kingdom and the Empire had been. Most of the Kingdom nobles believed that even if the Caster Aints Ul Gown joined in, this war would still end as a casual dust-up. The Empire's knights weren't only its military force, but also its police organization. They were the power that maintained the peace. Pointless losses were liable to shake the foundations of the country. The Kingdom waited for the Empire's forces to make their move. In a normal year, the Imperial army would pass in front of the Kingdom's army and then withdraw. Then the Kingdom's army would let out a triumphant shout. That was how it usually went. But the Imperial forces weren't moving. They had left their fortress-like barracks and taken up a position opposite the Kingdom's forces, but they hadn't moved a muscle since then. It was almost as if they were waiting for the kingdom to make a move, or perhaps there was something else they were waiting for. They were not moving, huh? What could it mean? Marquis Revan, standing next to Gazef, had spoken as he looked out at the unmoving Imperial Knights. Slightly behind the 105 men jostling in the central group was the King's position. It was the safest position, located on top of a somewhat tall hill. If the Empire didn't move, the kingdom couldn't move either. The kingdom knew that attacking would be foolish, as shown by the thickets of spears. A long time ago, some nobles had taken the initiative to attack, but they were killed instantly. The kingdom suffered substantial losses. Ever since then, the kingdom's tactics for facing the Empire were to set up their spear walls and wait. If their opponents fell back on their own, there was no sense in leaping into danger. Well, it seems like they were waiting for us to move. The final proposals have already been given, and the war has already started. Captain Sir Gazef, do you have any idea what the Empire might be waiting for? 30 minutes ago, messengers had negotiated between the two armies, glaring at each other. Well, they called them negotiations, but it was more like a game of exchanging unfeasible conditions. Basically, they said, look how merciful we are being, pretending to avoid the war to the last. Even though their offers were self-serving, they naturally failed to reach an understanding. It always came down to war. In a normal year, the Empire would have already been on the move. But this year, they simply stood at attention. Any idea? I mean, do you? No, I don't know much about military matters, so I've always left it up to my men. I know all too well how knowledgeable you are, your lordship, so that sounds an awful lot like a lie, but a lie, you certainly don't mince words, Sir Gazef. Have I offended you? If so, I am sorry. Ha ha ha, no, that's fine. I much prefer this attitude to how you were before. Gazef picked up on the jab and frowned. Ha ha ha, please just accept what I said. It's the truth that I don't have much skill in moving troops. And I happen to have a man under me who excels in just that. I am not lying. I leave it up to him. Could it be one of the former adventurers who are now famous for their performance during the demon disturbance? Oh no, they ray over there. A group of 5 people was standing in the corner Marquis Revan pointed at. They had all entered middle age and were probably past their prime. But as they were also former Orichalcum plate adventurers, even Gazef had the feeling that one couldn't be too careful around them. They ray my bodyguards. If you have such strong people protecting you, you'll be sure to make it back to the capital in one piece. Assuming we don't have to face that great caster. But wait, so who is your strategist? You don't know him. He is a commoner from my domain. I heard about him because he fought off a horde of goblins attacking his village with only half as many villagers. After that, I started putting him in command. And the surprising thing is, he hasn't lost yet. He is that good. I've given him a high rank in my staff. If he can earn such praise from you, Marquis Revan, then I'd like to meet him. I'd like to give him command of the entire Kingdom's army. If you put him in command, and the Kingdom's army operated as one, I am sure he would do battle in ways that would make neighboring countries say, you mustn't take the Rey Esti's Kingdom's army lightly. Gazef and Marquis Revan looked at each other, heaved tired sighs and smiled. The nobles would never allow a commoner to command the army. At present, it is a pipe dream. Yeah, it is impossible while we have these factions. The Imperial Army had proper organization. A general commanded each army, and then division commanders and battalion commanders followed. But in the kingdom, each noble brought his own soldiers. So even with the king as the overall commander, each unit acted according to their own ideas and faction alignment. To be blunt, the army had no unity whatsoever. Even Gazef was charged with leading the Royal Select only as their captain. It wasn't as if he could give orders to the nobles. There was a possibility of getting his ideas through as orders from the king, but many of the nobles looked down on Gazef due to his common background. They would find it disagreeable, so it could cause trouble for him in the future. The king knew this, so when he gave orders, he didn't do it through Gazef. The two men sighed heavily at the state of their country. Then they looked at each other and smiled. This discussion was one to have somewhere else, not on the battlefield where swords were about to clash. If we survive this, we'll still be on the battlefield, I guess. I hear that is how it is for nobles. When this is over, I am going to tell the king to please make you a noble. It irritated me that you were the king's sword, yet you never tried to engage with noble society. The Marquis said it in a joking way, but Gazef could see from the glint in his eyes that he actually was angry. He was glad that someone so skilled at concealing his emotions would show them to him. But it wasn't as nice when it was a negative emotion.